For centuries, Central Asia was nothing more than a vast, sparsely populated expanse of steppeland, mountains, and deserts. The modern-day borders were demarcated by the Kremlin, based broadly around the peoples they found in the area. And we now have 5 independent republics: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. After the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, they faced the challenge of standing on their own 2 feet. The diversity and inexperience of the countries were exploited by their former colonial master Russia, which saw sense in dividing and conquering the region. More than 3 decades on from independence, the countries appear to have weathered the storm. In this film, we are asking how powerful a player they have become, and after long years of poor relations between the individual countries, are they able to unite and form one powerful bloc? Let's start by looking at the history of the region. What did they have in common, and what divided them before Russian occupation? There were 2 groups of peoples. One group was nomadic, the other was settled. There were steppe nomads, so the future Kazakhs, the Kazakh people, and the desert nomads, so the Turkmen, the mountain nomads, meaning the Kyrgyz, and the people of the settlements in the south of the area of Central Asia, i.e. today's Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. As for the ethnic situation, Turkic people were predominant there, hence the name Turkestan, which is a colonial term. People spoke about an East Turkestan or Chinese Turkestan and West Turkestan or Russian Turkestan because the Turkic peoples were dominant in what became 4 out of the 5 Central Asian countries. They're the dominant titular nations, meaning the Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Turkmen and Uzbeks. The Tajiks are an exception as they're part of the large Indo-European family and are related, for example, to the Persians. When they gained their independence, many in the West predicted they would naturally gravitate to Western values. The countries went their own way and didn't form a region in the political meaning. When the USSR collapsed, Francis Fukuyama's concept of the end of history was in vogue in the West. It seemed as if liberal democracy would be successful worldwide, including in the countries of Central Asia, and that those countries would in general develop in a similar fashion or direction to those of the countries of the post-Eastern Bloc of Central and Eastern Europe. In fact, the path they took led to increased disunity. It turned out that those countries were not only heading towards authoritarianism. In Tajikistan, there was a bloody civil war for 5 years, from 1992 to 1997. But it would also be necessary to talk to each of these countries individually, because practically everywhere that authoritarian regimes are in power, there is simply a lack of trust to their neighbors. They fear that those neighbors, along with the internal opposition, are some kind of a threat to their rule. And okay, at the very beginning, there were some attempts towards an agreement. For example, between Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, 3 or 4 Central Asian countries. But everything was ephemeral. No unions or regional organizations were established. Looking at the map, it's clear that Uzbekistan would play a central role in any large-scale integration project. Here we need to single out Uzbekistan as the country playing the central role in Central Asia, because it borders all the other former Soviet Central Asian republics: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan and Tajikistan. It also has a border with Afghanistan, but it doesn't have a border with Russia. But for many years, Uzbekistan had a policy of economic isolationism, so autarky, self-sufficiency. And this meant that unity was far from being Uzbekistan's priority. Large border control, very assertive relations with their neighbors, and because it bordered all those countries, if Uzbekistan closed itself off, it caused defined transport problems. For many years, people had, for example, traveled from northern Tajikistan from Hujan to Dushanbe via Samarkand, but this route was closed, and Uzbekistan also blocked the railway running through its territory to Tajikistan. So this isolationism as Uzbekistan's official policy was hard to break through in this situation.
Była trudna do przełamania w tej sytuacji.
And Uzbekistan was also the key to the change.
To się zaczęło zmieniać po śmierci Islama Karimowa.
This started to change after the death of Islam Karimov at the end of 2016. The new president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, began a rapprochement with the country's neighbours. These were obviously long-term processes because for very many years the borders, though not totally shut, were very difficult to cross. And that's without mentioning, for example, the Kyrgyzstan-Tajikistan border, which saw regular warfare. We can mention here that the current map of Central Asia is a holdover from Soviet times. The borders did not simply demarcate 5 countries in their essential territories. The countries also have many enclaves within the territory of other countries, and access to those enclaves, their ability to function, created conflicts between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. But as I said, Uzbekistan played a crucial role here. Due to its change in policy, that period is over. At the start of 2025, a border agreement was signed by the prime ministers. It's still not a treaty, but it is a far-reaching deal between the 3 countries which share the Fergana Valley, the heart of Central Asia, meaning Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan.
Czyli Uzbekistanem, Tadżykistanem i Kirgistanem.
Of course, there is one factor which, to one degree or another, does unite the 5 countries: their colonial past. All 5 countries are in the Russia-led Commonwealth of Independent States, and they all have other close relations with Russia.
Na przykład Kazachstan I Kyrgyzstan należą zarówno...
Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan belong to both the Eurasian Economic Union and the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Tajikistan is only in the Collective Security Treaty Organization, but not the Eurasian Economic Union. Russia would really like to have Uzbekistan in the Eurasian Economic Union since it has the largest population and is developing fast. But the country is not keen on that, though it does maintain good relations with Russia since it's not possible to quickly and effectively reduce its ties with Russia. But Turkmenistan, with its policies of permanent non-involvement or isolation, is Russia's most difficult partner. But there's a certain authoritarian overlap between the Berdi Muhammadov regime in Turkmenistan and the Kremlin, and this is one reason why contacts between those countries can also be considered to be good, by the standards of Turkmenistan, even quite close.
Jak na warunki Turkmenistanu, całkiem bliskie.
But Russia is not interested in strengthening the region's independence.
Rosja nie patrzy przychylnie na wysiłki integracji.
Russia takes a bad view of the integration moves in Central Asia which are taking place without Russia being involved. Russia has always preferred bilateral relations with the individual governments, a one-on-one way of dealing with issues. And these pro-integration efforts between the countries of the region mean they could become a more difficult or more assertive partner for Russia. Russia does need to accept the fact that some integration is happening in the region and that it can't directly influence this process, but it doesn't like it and is worried about it. So we can assume that it's using certain mechanisms behind the scenes to slightly delay and slow down this integration.
Nieco opóźniać ten proces I spowalniać go.
This change is not only seen in regional cooperation, but also in the re-emergence of national identities after centuries of foreign domination.
W ostatnim czasie w Kazachstanie pojawiła się nawet taka narracja...
Lately in Kazakhstan, there's even been a decolonization narrative, meaning that Kazakhs should decolonize their own culture, separate it from the Russian or Soviet influences which were present for years, and create their own, typically Kazakh culture. Russia's presence and later the presence of the USSR had a huge influence on the countries of the region, and it was often a harmful influence. The local societies are becoming increasingly aware of the nature of this Russian influence. It's particularly visible in Kazakhstan, which was the most Russified country in the region. And now we're seeing a return to both Kazakh culture and the Kazakh language. And not only in traditional terms. It's increasingly also seen in pop culture, which appeals to the younger members of society who don't even remember Soviet times and who were raised in an independent Kazakhstan. There's a very popular band which has been successful internationally. It's called 91, which refers to the year in which Kazakhstan gained independence. It's an attempt to make a Kazakh boy band and was heavily influenced by and based on Korea's K-pop. This music has been called Q-pop, and it's become very popular.
Swego czasu zdobył dosyć dużą popularność.
And Russia's aggressive foreign policy has served as a catalyst to increase integration in the region.
Akt agresji Rosji na Ukrainę, czyli to zakwestionowanie...
Russia's aggression against Ukraine, questioning the status quo, caused shockwaves in Central Asia. For decades, since the fall of the USSR, Moscow, Russia, had been seen as the guarantor of the post-Soviet system, as the guarantor, for example, of the inviolability of the borders of the new independent states. The post-Soviet system hasn't existed for a long time, of course. All the countries have taken their own separate paths. But it seemed like the borders that were handed down would last. And so, in attacking Ukraine, Russia questioned this legacy. And the countries of Central Asia, in particular Kazakhstan, felt threatened by this and reached the conclusion that if they act as one player, as 5 countries appearing together, then their voice will be louder.
Jako 5 państw wspólnie występujących, ich głos będzie lepiej słyszalny.
So what shape is this integration taking?
Więc bardzo szybko powstał taki format C5+.
The C5 Plus format came very quickly. It groups the 5 countries of Central Asia together with a partner, a player from outside the region. We've had meetings in the C5 Plus USA format, C5 Plus Germany, C5 Plus South Korea. There are also annual consultative meetings of the heads of state of the Central Asian countries. And there are very many smaller Central Asian formats and also ones with Azerbaijan or, for example, with Turkey or other neighbors.
Na przykład z innymi sąsiadami.
One of Central Asia's near neighbors shares many factors with it: the Soviet past, their religion, and roots that go even deeper.
Azerbejdżan oczywiście nie znajduje się geograficznie w Azji Centralnej.
Azerbaijan, in geographical terms, is obviously not in Central Asia, but it does have a lot in common with the countries of Central Asia. First, its language. 4 of the 5 Central Asia countries, the exception is Tajikistan, speak Turkic languages, as do the Azeris. All these countries are majority Muslim, too. But here are also more mercantile interests, otherwise there wouldn't be any cooperation. This above all concerns transport, because these transport links from Central Asia and Azerbaijan make it possible to link Central Asia almost all the way to Europe.
Azję Wschodnią niemalże z Europą.
And the region is also trying to improve its links to another neighbor, one which is considered to be a very difficult partner.
Relacje z Afganistanem są...
The relations with Afghanistan are really improving from month to month. In spite of this, however, there are still problems. There are always some problems. For example, there's the exchange of fire across the Afghan-Tajik border, the issue over the administration of the waters of the Amu Darya River between Afghanistan and Uzbekistan is still to be resolved. But these are minor issues, and the countries of Central Asia are very careful not to emphasize them in the official narrative. I think that all the countries want to have at least acceptable relations, and ideally good relations with Afghanistan. They are beginning to open diplomatic relations. There's an Afghan ambassador in Uzbekistan, which is a little odd given that the country hasn't officially recognized the Taliban government. In other countries, there are offices, or charge d'affaires stationed there. And Afghanistan is important for 2 reasons. The first one is security. In the countries of Central Asia, in particular those which have a border with Afghanistan, there's an awareness that the alternative to Taliban rule is war, and an extremely unstable situation, which would pose a threat to their own security and influence the increase of terrorism in the region. And those terrorists would flow to the north, threatening Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And the other reason is transport, because Afghanistan is the gateway to South Asia.
do Azji Południowej.
But good relations with its immediate neighbours is only the beginning. This region is in the heart of Asia and is also rich in resources, oil, gas, rare earth elements. Their reasons to cooperate are in part based on their desire to have more clout when dealing with the big players, Russia, China, the United States and the European Union. But we discussed this in our other video on Central Asia as it's viewed from the outside. Click on the link to watch it now.